Can the Bucks pick themselves up off the mat for game 2 of their first-round series with the Indiana Pacers? And how do they do that? Camille and I give you the answers coming up after this on today's Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. You can find Camille on the Technical Foul podcast. You can catch my work on the Bucks Radio Network. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day, and for checking out the Locked On Bucks newsletter. You can still sign up for that if you have not done so yet for free at lockedondaily.com and get your day started with the all-new and free Locked On Bucks newsletter. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Camille, the good thing about 2 days in between games, quite a bit in this series, is you get so much time to keep mowing the same piece of grass and keep pouring over the same talking points that are going to be persistent, I would assume, throughout the series. Rotations, starting lineup, Damian Lillard's health. Since we last spoke, we have gotten one minor update. So the initial injury report for the game was submitted Monday afternoon, and Damian Lillard, as we record this, is listed as questionable, an upgrade there. Doc talked to practice too about, I know he's close. I don't know what the rest of the process is, but I know he's close to playing. I had gone back and forth between whether or not we see him in game 2 or game 3. What about you? Does that change at all?
Hearing Doc's comments after practice and seeing him upgraded to questionable, it's actually making me feel like game 2 might be in play for Dame. After I know we talked about it yesterday's episode too, of like, is it 2 or is it 3? And I made the joke of like, well, he was talking like it was about to be 2 Dame to the Pacers, but seeing them upgraded to questionable, seeing Doc say like he looks really good, I know he's close. I'm feeling like game 2 actually might be that return.
Okay, I did the opposite of you. So
really?
That's interesting. I just listened to, I forget how he said it exactly, but Doc talking about he's close and he looks really good. I don't know what the other steps are. And I took that to, he's close as in couple more days, that I think it'll be game 3, but I hope I'm wrong. And I guess we'll find out later on today when we continue to get updates to that injury report. We'll see if it stays at questionable, if it does get upgraded to probable. I don't anticipate that happening between now and the game. But that's the one update that we got between the game now and getting set for game number 2. What we've gotten a lot of updates from our fans on in the audience is those Bucks rotations. And we asked you on yesterday's show to leave your thoughts. How confident are you in the Bucks in this series? Do you still believe they will win the series? There was a lot of pumping of the chests before this series started, and the Bucks got punched in the mouth in game 1. We both said we're still confident the Bucks are going to win this series. I was curious where the audience would go. And in just looking through a lot of the comments that we got, Camille, it seems like Bucks fans are still very confident that they are going to win this series with a couple of caveats.
Yeah, that made me actually happy to see him sticking to it. Like if you came into the series thinking it was going to be the Bucks in however many games it was, to see that a lot of people were still saying like, yeah, I still got the Bucks. I was proud of Bucks fans there. I know Frank made a joke on Twitter during game 1 saying, one of the most predictable things that you can have is, the Bucks looking bad and then the fan base being like, yo, we are out on these guys. So seeing the Locked On Bucks fans come through and say like, no, we're still in it. We still believe in the Bucks. Made me feel proud of the fan base here. But I think they can all see the path forward of how success can happen. But also, I think more Bucks fans now have even more of a healthy respect for the Pacers. This is a really good Pacers team. Like the offense might not be hitting at the historical levels that it was last year, but it's a team returning a lot of the same guys, pretty much their entire playoff rotation from last year, and having Mathurin actually healthy to play in this series, unlike he was last year. And they're a good team, better defensively, still can be lethal offensively. Siakam's been consistent. So I think there's a bit more respect for the Pacers, but still that confidence like, hey, the Bucks can still win this series.
You don't have to tell me, the resident Arizona Wildcats expert, about Benedict Mathurin and his style of play and what he brings. Their offense is not as good as it was a season ago, or at least as prolific. I mean, it was historically good for large parts of the season, but their defense is much improved. And, one of the other pieces lost in the shuffle there is the Bucks. We know the record last year against the Indiana Pacers. We talked about the record this year too, and how I think you can largely throw two of those games out because of how both teams were playing and changes that occurred. But two of Giannis's biggest games last year against the Pacers, and I'll preface by saying this: I'm not in any way suggesting this guy is a Giannis stopper, but two of his biggest games, including that 64-point game, were before they traded for Pascal Siakam. And that's kind of been a gradual ramping up process for the Pacers too, and figuring out how to best utilize him alongside the rest of their group. He started the series terrific last year, and he was, I think, if not him, it was Tyrese Halliburton that was the best player on the floor in game one.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think what Siakam was like 10 of 15 from the field in game one against the Bucks. Really efficient how he got to his spots. He's a physical player as well. And I like that the Bucks came out with Giannis taking out assignment for Siakam. And then the other way of Siakam looking to check Giannis, and the Bucks saying like, hey, we got to try to find ways to get Miles Turner back on Giannis, because that's a matchup we like to exploit. So I have a lot of respect for Siakam, and it goes even back to when he was still on the Raptors as like that fourth, fifth option for that team and making an impact against the Bucks in the playoffs back then. He's somebody who Bucks fans have seen for a few years, and now his game has continued to elevate to a part where he doesn't have to be that third or fourth guy on the team. He can be that one or two alongside of another star with Tyrese Halliburton. So a lot of respect for Siakam, and I think it is going to be on the Bucks to continue to find ways to get him off of Giannis and try to find the easiest matchups possible for him going forward.
Yeah, and I do wonder, and this is not in any way a unique thought of kicking around, because this has been making the rounds everywhere. I think Eric talked about it. It's been on a few other shows that I listen to as well. Of, do we see that change of swapping out, going with Brook Lopez and Miles Turner and Giannis and Pascal Siakam, and just go with Brook Lopez on Pascal Siakam? Because I don't, as we're going to get to some lineup discussions, as that's been another heavy talking point here. Whatever changes, if any, the Bucks make to their starting lineup, I feel pretty confident in saying, Camille, it's not going to include removing Brook Lopez. So I do wonder if we see that change up, and then again, more of the Bucks just switching on everything, not overhelping, and staying home. Those things are going to be important, and also just figuring out what's our strategy with Brook Lopez, because he's out there to protect the rim. And what the Pacers were doing was getting to the corners. So when Brook has to drop back into that drop defense and get to the rim, you're spreading things out. And we've seen a defensive system that's been predicated on Brook Lopez not helping and not getting out there to the corners. But that's going to give the Pacers wide open looks, and they hit a lot of those in game one.
Yeah, especially when that is happening and there are other guys who are also trying to help Brook Lopez down in the paint. So then they're leaving guys open on the perimeter, and then that scramble happens and the guys are too far away to really execute a proper closeout, or someone who should rotate over, they do that, but the next guy doesn't rotate over to the next one. It just causes some problems. So I think for the Bucks, to your point, based on what Doc was saying too in his presser today, it doesn't feel like anything drastic is going to happen with the starting lineup. He seems to really like that bench grouping, being able to see the flow of the game before they actually get into the game. And he also mentioned the fact too of like, hey, the closing lineups can change. We're very flexible with that. We are perfectly fine going with whatever guys are playing the best in that particular game. And I don't want to say this and people misconstrue what I'm trying to say, but I don't see many lineups where Brook Lopez is in like that closing group. But I do think that Brook Lopez is still going to be able to give you a good, 20 minutes a game if you're able to execute properly around him and understand okay, if they're trying to pull Brook out to the corner, what do our rotations need to be? Are we going to try to ask Brook Lopez to make it from the rim out to that shooter, or are we going to try to rotate in a different way while he's out there? So I think for the Bucks, it's just figuring out how to maximize those minutes, because to your point about not seeing Brook Lopez coming out of that starting lineup, he's just crucial, I think, to the Bucks base defense that for them to make a move like that.
Yeah, there's a couple other things I want to touch on as it pertains to Brook Lopez, but we mentioned it. I went back and rewatched the game, and looking through what we've seen the last, couple weeks, 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks from this team, there's a couple of things that stood out. So I do want to revisit the starting lineup conversation. And there's some interesting things said by Doc Rivers, not just on Damian Lillard looking good and looking close, but about the Bucks defense and playoff defense as a whole. So we will get into that conversation coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. The NBA playoffs are finally here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. You'll love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, Camille, as we remind everybody to be sure to sign up for the Locked On Bucks newsletter. You can get it for free at lockedondaily.com and get the latest on the Bucks in your inbox each and every day to start your morning. So a couple other things on Brook Lopez. Yeah, we're both aligned, as much as it is going to upset, from the looks of it, a lot of Bucks fans. He ain't coming out of the starting lineup. I do think the other piece is, I think the number of minutes you can play Brook Lopez in this series. And to be clear, we're talking about this series against the Pacers. Yes. Everything you mentioned it on yesterday's show, playoffs, the crucible of the playoffs, matchups change, and guys that are quote unquote unplayable, that changes series to series. In this format against the Pacers, I think the number of minutes you play Brook is a floating figure. And I think a lot of it has to do with the start the Bucks get off to. Like, if you are hitting shots and you're being able to set your defense and dig in, you're starting to dictate the pace against the Indiana Pacers. And in those moments, that's where you can impose your will and bring in Brook Lopez. When it starts to get out of reach, like we saw in game number 1, that's when it becomes more challenging because of what Indiana is set up to do offensively and how they're going to attack. So that in many ways, it makes fast starts all the more important for the Bucks. And maybe not even fast starts, just don't start terribly. Don't do what you did midway through the second quarter again, and especially earlier in games.
I agree with that. And then my question that I'm thinking that while thinking that through is just like, how long is the leash, right? Because part of the problem for the Bucks has been the slow starts or certain groups getting into the game and then they kind of lose the rope during that time. And the question is, well, how long is the rope going to be for guys, especially in the playoff series? It's game 2, you're down, 0-1 in this series right now. If things don't go well in game 2, how much does that leash continue to shorten? And it's not just a Brook Lopez question. It's just for guys who aren't executing properly. We've heard why, like that closing lineup that we've seen as of late, why that particular lineup works. And we hear about the decision-making is quick. Everyone can shoot. They're not hesitating. The defense, the rotations are a bit better. They're moving, a bit quicker. The flow is just better. So if that's what you have with that closing group, and you're looking at who else is playing, and at the time, again, not specific just to Brook Lopez. This could be Taurean Prince, not understanding the rotations or the closeout. It could be on Kuz, whoever that might be. But just like, how much longer is the rope going to be in this series if things do take a turn come game 2? Again, I think how they start is going to be of the utmost importance. And Doc has shown that he does not have any qualms of pulling people mid-game or letting guys sit as he's seeing it's not working. It's just for me, I feel like I would just love to not have to be in the hole for those decisions to be made. Sarah, if you see something's not working quickly, like how quick can you actually make those adjustments and those moves for the rotations?
I think you're able to shorten the leash in game 2 as well because of the 2 days off that you
Yeah, that's
have
true.
after this. So it ain't working. Let's go back to what was working and may not be, I wouldn't even say suboptimal because you assume guys are going to take on more minutes in the playoffs, especially your best players. But it gives you even more leeway there to know we got 2 days off after this game. And then we come back home and we play later on, 7 o'clock tip on Friday and then 8:30 on Sunday. So we got more time to recover there that I do wonder if that leash gets even shorter. A couple of guys that we singled out on the show yesterday, you and Frank talked about as well. I think it is worth digging into that discussion again with the starters. We'll get to that in the next segment, but we mentioned Doc had some interesting things to say, the update on Damian Lillard and how he looks and their expectations there. But a lot of questions centered on the defense and what the atmosphere in terms of physicality is like in the playoffs.
I think the one thing that the playoffs are showing is they're going to let you play. I watched the Houston and game last night, and my gosh, they're going to let you play, and that's what we want. I like that. I think it's better. It's a better brand of basketball. It's more competitive, but we have to be able to play through it. You just can't be the hitter and then not be able to take the hits. You got to be able to do both.
So we talked about this the last couple of years too, of, the rule changes and not even rule changes, just the way that the league has decided to officiate things after I think we probably hit the breaking point of offense and okay, this is too much. The unfortunate part for the Bucks is they were a physical team. They were set up to play that way. I'm not even going to say they don't have it anymore. They still have some of those components. And that's the other big thing is styles make fights. You got to lean into that physicality and be the physical team. The Pacers were the more aggressive, more physical team. It started in game 1 on the opening tip when they get the opening tip in a crowd of 3 Bucks going after it. That's the way Indiana played. That's the way the Bucks are going to have to play to set the tone and to try best as they can to dictate pace with that physicality.
They are. And that's an aspect of this team that Doc pointed out last year when he took over of like, hey, we're older, we're bigger, we're slower.
We're not going to win a track meet. We're going to win the shot put.
So like we have to be a physical team. And this year's edition of the Bucks, they've gotten a bit younger, right? But they still have size. Like physicality should still be baked into the DNA of what they're looking to do. And I agree with Doc on like, hey, they're letting guys play in the playoffs. That's what you asked for. And again, I mentioned like temperament as something too I was looking at in this game of like, if you're not getting the calls, you cannot spend time complaining to the refs or staying down in the court and looking over it. You have to get back. And I think for the Bucks, physicality has to be exerted on defense for sure. Make sure that guys can feel you, but also on the offensive end of just playing with pace, as we've talked about, of like, you can't be casual about it. So when it's coming like physicality on the offensive side, it's just really dictating your pace onto their defense. And I felt that the Pacers defense in game 1 did such a good job of denying the Bucks of a lot of actions they wanted to run. And then the Bucks just kind of were like, okay, well, now what do we do? Yeah. So it's being ready and having that secondary and that third action baked in case that first one doesn't work out. So like, I think physicality for the Bucks is both sides of the ball, but we talk about the defense a lot and they have to lean into that defensively, especially with the way games are being called.
Yeah. And Doc basically signed off on that and had the same thoughts as you did.
No. Do you? I mean, I didn't think we were at all, personally. I thought, when you can't figure out who's guarding the guy in the pick and roll, that means you're not very physical. I didn't think we got into the ball at all. I thought Halliburton went wherever he wanted the entire game, all of them. And we didn't meet the necessary needs of a playoff game, physicality. That's number one. We just didn't meet the need. And that's on me. That's on everyone. We have to meet that need.
Yeah. I mean, basically what we said, the Pacers were the more physical team. The Pacers played like this is a playoff game. The Bucks lost hold of that rope, and that's going to be an important piece in the final, however many more games. Hopefully more than 3, much more than 3 that the Bucks have here in this first round series. Mentioned there were some other takeaways on the starting lineup that we dug into a little bit more. And you mentioned one thing a couple of moments ago that really struck me several times throughout the course of this season, but especially in game 1 against Indiana on Saturday. So we'll tell you what that was and why it's important coming up after this. So I do want to get to starting lineups, and one thing I've been kind of going back and forth on, and now I think I found an answer, Camille, in terms of how I feel. But you mentioned you got to get back. If you miss a shot, you can't just linger back there and maybe opine for the call to the official, whatever it is. You got to get back. And in game 1, this happened a couple of times. I don't have the numbers to back this up. It feels like Giannis has not been, and I'm not saying bad, not quite as efficient finishing around the rim this season as in other seasons. And the killer there is the way Giannis plays. When he misses at the rim, he's going into the stanchion, he's into a photographer and picking himself up, and the Pacers are getting out and running. They're playing 5-on-4, and you either have Brook Lopez or no other bigs back there to protect the rim, and it's guaranteed points. The Pacers were incredibly efficient in fast break. They were even better in the half court, which should be the more troubling thing. And I think that backs up Doc saying we got to be more physical and we got to bring that type of mindset. But those plays, and Dame, same story. When you're missing layups and dunks at the rim with your point guards and your bigs like a Giannis, it's basically gift wrapping a layup or a clean look to the opponent on the other end.
Yeah, especially when that person who is missing can be as crucial of a defensive piece as Giannis, where it's like, okay, we're looking to get back here. But yeah, I think that's a great point of just mentioning how many opportunities players can get to play 5-on-4 just because of how the shot is missed and what it takes to kind of get back into the play from that. And when I think about this Bucks team, and again, just how fast you have to continue to play, I think that goes into it. And also just like the crowd can kind of egg you on a little bit. I know Doc was asked about the free throw counter for Giannis and how that might be affecting his game, but you just got to continue to play through it. You have to understand what the opponent is trying to do, and you can't let them kind of get you into that bag of like, okay, we know they like to play fast, so I can't afford to stay back here. Or if I miss, I know I have to sprint. I'm going to be tired, but I have to get back. I mean, that's part of the reason why we've heard the Bucks or Doc Rivers mentions like, we don't crash offensive boards too much because, we're trying to get back. We're trying to get back. And, when Kuz was brought along, it was mentioned of, hey, maybe he can be one of those guys to actually crash the offensive glass because he has the speed to try to get back. But we haven't seen the Bucks put that piece of it into action. But what they have to do against the Pacers is make sure they're getting back. And you mentioned the half court numbers for the Pacers that were so outstanding in this game 1, which to your point, that worried me a bit more than the transition points. And that part of it comes down to me again of being sharp on who is supposed to switch here, what the rotations are, who needs to be where. And it was times where it felt like guys should have been going under screens. At times they were going over screens or playing up on the guys who aren't the great shooters, leaving shooters open at times. So they got to really, it comes down to the Bucks got to tighten up. They have to tighten up and they have to execute better. Like the margin of error is not big enough on this team for you to be able to take plays off, take possessions off, and do however you want to do. Like the margin of error is slim, especially when it's just Giannis as your lone superstar out there. So you can't take the game for granted.
They had a 114 offensive rating in the half court, which is just about as good as it gets for Indiana. So that number certainly has to change for the Bucks as well. And if you're watching this on YouTube, Camille, you can see it's gotten to be that time of day where the sun is starting to set and it's invading my personal space here. So I'm going to adjust the lighting in just a second so you can actually see me. But I'm going to put this out there too. I mentioned thought through the starting lineups, and where I've fallen is regardless of what happens with Damian Lillard, I have kind of moved into the camp of you know what? I think I would bring Taurean Prince off the bench, and I would start AJ Green in his place because of the defensive matchups that you get with another guard back there. AJ shooting. I just like Gary Trent Jr. in the bench role, and the guy that is coming on, not just knocking down shots, but creating offense. His first 3 field goals were 2s in that game on Saturday. So I like AJ, and I like maximizing AJ's minutes with Giannis out there as well. And I think you could make a case for either guy of who do you replace, Taurean Prince or Kyle Kuzma. I still think you want and need Kyle Kuzma's size, and he's shown you that ability defensively that AJ is a solid defender. Kuzma can switch around to multiple guys. You got Giannis as well. Giannis's defense, I didn't think was terribly great in game 1, but again, you're asking him to do everything else offensively. I think that's a big part of it. To me, that's what I would start to lean towards here with the starters.
I get it. AJ would be the one I would pick as well to enter into the starting lineup. Like, I know there's a lot of people who call for Gary Trent Jr., but I think you lay out the case really well as to why him coming off the bench still works for this Bucks team. Kevin Porter Jr. has been a name that's been thrown out there as well, but especially without Dame in the lineup, just being able to know you have that other ball handler coming off the bench who can kind of anchor those minutes without Giannis on the court as well until he comes back. He also has a great chemistry with Giannis, and of course you can close games in that way, but AJ Green, we've talked about his 3-point shooting ability and coming into it, like when he was coming on to the Bucks 2-3 years ago at this point, it was, his NBA talent, like his skill is an elite ability to shoot the ball. Like that's what we expected. The defense that we've seen from AJ Green has been better than what I thought it could be initially when he was brought on as a 2-way guy for the squad. And more importantly, in this series, I mentioned giving props to the Pacers defense and how they were playing. They are scrambling really quickly. They seem very assignment short of where they're supposed to be. They're doubling at interesting times, coming late sometimes, coming from the blinds. Like they're just doing things really well. And you need guys out there who are going to shoot the ball as soon as they have the space to shoot it. And AJ Green has had that skill set. I've said, and like, I would love AJ Green to get 10 shots a game. Like I need him putting the ball up. And in the first game against the Pacers, you saw him actively being like, okay, I'm here to hunt these shots out. And if you give me a sliver of space, I'm going to put it up. And that's what the Bucks need to continuously have, because I think in the first quarter, they only had like 5 or 6 3-point shot attempts at that point in the game. Like they took more as the game went on, but you need those attempts to go up. And AJ Green has an ability to really tilt the floor. And when Dame does come back, if your backcourt is Dame and AJ Green there to start off, the way you can kind of stretch the floor and give some additional space to Giannis and even Kuz, who can be cutting or doing other things in that way, and Brook can stretch the floor as well. I think the spacing also makes a lot of sense on the floor that way.
They took 5 threes in the opening quarter, and Indiana made 5 in the opening quarter on 12 attempts. So, yeah, you need that shooting is so important, and I think AJ Green. We know AJ Green brings that. So I do wonder if we do see more of that. I would not. I'll say this too. When Dame does come back, and I think we can safely say when now.
Yeah.
I don't think that means, nor should it mean, this is the end of the line in this series for Ryan Rollins. I still have a lot of confidence in Ryan Rollins. He didn't have a great game. I didn't think he had a terrible game in game 1. He started out as one of your more steady players in that game too, but I would just love to continue to see more minutes for Ryan Rollins and more in the sense of keeping what he had in game 1 and figuring out a way, even when you got Dame back and you got those 3 guys, how do we keep Ryan Rollins involved here for 15 minutes or so if you can get that, because of his length, his versatility, and just I've said it before, he just seems to, he doesn't get flustered. And having said that, I'm sure people are going to point out, here was this sequence in game 1 or here was this, but he just seems to play to the moment. And I would much rather continue to harness that and develop that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that point. And that's the question I have of when Dame comes back, how does that affect the rotation? Because I was honestly not sure if even Sims would crack the playoff rotation come game 1. Like I could see how his skill set could be valuable And I do think going forward, like, yes, Sims can be very valuable to you in this series. But I was just curious because we've heard Doc mention he likes to have a shorter rotation come playoff time. But he had also found at the end of the season here, hey, these 4 bench guys work really good. And you're already looking at a 9-man rotation there. If there are 4 bench guys that you like to incorporate into your lineup in addition to your starters, you throw in Sims, who can get some minutes. Dame comes back, and it feels like Rollins would be that odd man out. But I do wonder if when Dame comes back, I'm assuming there's going to be some type of minutes restriction at first. Yeah. And I wonder if Rollins becomes like the guard version of Sims, where it's just like, it might only be
10 minutes or
10
so.
minutes, but like make an impact in these minutes when you come in the game. And it's probably going to be done on the defensive side of the ball.
We shall see. There's a lot of anxiety going into this one today. Look, and part of it too is as we experienced in 2021. It's a much different story to be down 0-2 when you have home court advantage versus when you're on the road, but still you don't want to be in that situation either way. So we'll see if Damian Lillard plays. We'll see if the Bucks can pick themselves up off the mat and to answer the call and make this an even series coming back to Milwaukee. We will have the post-game recap of this one later on tonight. Hopefully we're getting you up to speed on an even series. That'll do it for today's show. For Camille, for the sunlight behind me as well. Leave your thoughts in the comments, the thoughts on the starting lineup or what change is the biggest thing you would look for the Bucks to make here going into game 2. And we'll share your thoughts on the post-game show coming up tomorrow. That'll do it for today, though. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.